The Prime Minister of Haiti, Ariel Henry, works alongside the Kenyan President William Ruto to speed up the arrival of the support forces for the national police. Niger's military junta announced the reopening of its borders with 5 neighboring nations. China's Meteorological Service confirmed the heaviest rains in 140 years. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. On Tuesday, the Prime Minister of Haiti, Ariel Henry, confirmed that he is in contact with the President of Kenya, William Ruto, to formalize the advances that will accelerate the arrival of the support forces to the national police. Henry assured that the President of Kenya ratified that in the next few days, the reconnaissance and evaluation mission will arrive in the Caribbean country in the midst of the controversy due to the rejection generated by Haitian sectors and the international community that evaluate the mission as a foreign intervention. According to President Ruto, the African nation will deploy 150 officials who will be under the orders of the United Nations. On the other hand, the government of Bahamas said in a statement they welcomed the decision of Kenya and committed 150 people to support the efforts if the United Nations authorizes the force. Costa Rica's Public Prosecutor's Office opened an investigation on Tuesday against the President of the Republic, Rodrigo Chavez, and several members of his government for influence peddling. The Public Prosecutor's Office received a criminal complaint for a business person, president of an entity. In a brief statement, the Prosecutor's Office acknowledged the beginning of the investigation for influence peddling. The case, of which they do not add more because it is in a private stage, also involves the Vice President and other officials. The deputy of the Broad Front, Ariel Romero, referred to the information provided in the parliament by one of the allegedly swindled business persons. In Guatemala, the Supreme Electoral Court confirmed Tuesday to be under investigation by the Public Prosecutor's Office. At least 13 criminal cases have been filed against the Supreme Electoral Court, as certified by its president, Irma Palencia. In an official statement read to the media, Palencia said to ignore the reasons behind such an inquiry by the General Attorney, but that most of the charges relate to complaints they have already attended to. Palencia said the High Electoral Court does not intend to interfere with the proposed schedule for the elections, and that her office and the fully support to a successful electoral process.
The documents that the Public Prosecutor Office is sending to the Supreme Electoral Court requesting information, logically, are part, perhaps, of an inquiry, which we wish were not happening, but I believe we have provided them with answers, that they have been given all the information they have requested, and I believe that we will continue to do so within the framework of our jurisdictions, and that we will continue to do so despite there are being things we don't agree with.
And the Secretary General of the Organization of American States, Luis Almagro, arrived in Guatemala to assess firsthand the situation in the country amid the electoral process. The Guatemala Ministry of Foreign Affairs said Almagro will remain in the country until Friday, August the 4th, responding to an invitation made by the President Alejandro Giammattei last July the 26th. According to the Foreign Ministry, Almagro's visit will contribute to strengthening democratic institutions in the country amid the electoral process. Almagro is scheduled to meet with Guatemalan President Alejandro Giammattei and with magistrates of the Supreme Electoral Court and with magistrates of the Constitutional Court, as well as with representatives of civil society organizations of the private sector and with the presidential candidates still in race. In Colombia, social, peasant, and indigenous organizations will mobilize on Wednesday in the country's capital in support of peace, democracy, and popular participation. The organizers estimate that around 1,000 social leaders from different regions of Colombia will arrive in Valparaíso to participate in the different activities scheduled for this Wednesday. Among the demands of the social movements, peasants and indigenous people will also demand the dismantling of paramilitary groups in several rural areas of the South American country. Violence and persecution of social leaders is another concern of the organizers of the marches in several cities of Colombia. The Institute of Studies for Development and Peace pointed out that in the first 8 months of 2023, 98 leaders have been murdered in Colombia. Ecuador's Constitutional Court admitted a lawsuit filed by the Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities of that nation, CONAIE, against a decree of President Lazo's government to accelerate mining projects. In this way, environmental consultations of mining activities are provisionally suspended, a prior step for the Ministry of the Environment to grant environmental licenses to foreign companies. The court has ordered and considered the application of the procedure to be credible, imminent, and potentially harmful, affecting several Canadian and local companies. CONAIE ratifies that these processes violate the fundamental rights of the native or indigenous communities. Chilean teachers begin on Wednesday a new 48-hour strike to make the government hear the demands. Chilean Teachers Association President Carlos Diaz said that the strike derives from a lack of response from the Ministry of Education to an 8-point petition. Their demands include the reparation of a historical debt that is paying delayed retirement bonuses, along with the cessation of labor harassment, having better conditions at work, and putting an end to school violence. Diaz said there will be 130 buses, bringing in teachers from various regions of the country to the capital to gather outside the Congress headquarters. The Ministry of Education is expected to deliver a proposal to the Teachers Association before the start of the announced 48-hour strike. The teachers' union said that if an agreement is not reached with the Ministry of Education before August 17th, the teachers will consider staging an indefinite strike. And now let's take a short break. But remember, you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find the news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. In the United States, the former President Donald Trump has been indicted by a federal court grand jury as part of the investigation into alleged attempts to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. The charges include conspiracy to defraud, witness tampering, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, and conspiracy against citizens' rights. The charging document alleges that Trump conspired with 6 other unnamed individuals to undermine the results of the 2020 election. The former president has been called to appear in federal court on Thursday. The Republican candidate's press service has called the allegations an attempt by the Biden administration to intervene in the 2024 campaign results.
Attack on our nation's capital on January 6, 2021 was an unprecedented assault on the seat of American democracy. As described in the indictment, it was fueled by lies. Lies by the defendant targeted at obstructing a bedrock function of the U.S. government, the nation's process of collecting, counting, and certifying the results of the presidential election.
In this context, Special Counsel Jack Smith also said the U.S. Department of Justice will seek a speedy trial against former President Donald Trump over allegations that he tried to overturn the 2020 presidential election.
In this case, my office will seek a speedy trial so that our evidence can be tested in court and judged by a jury of citizens.
And on Tuesday, the U.S. credit rating agency Fitch downgraded the United States credit rating from triple to a AA+. In Fitch's view, there has been a steady deterioration in standards of governance over the last 20 years, including on fiscal and debt matters, notwithstanding the June bipartisan agreement to suspend the debt limit until January 2025. However, the White House said the agency's decision defies reality, while U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said said she strongly disagrees with Fitch's rating, saying it is arbitrary and based on outdated data. Fitch's downgrade of U.S. credit rating has sparked fears over the Treasury issuance, but Yellen said in a statement that Treasury securities remain the world's preeminent safe and liquid asset and that the U.S. economy is fundamentally strong. And the Pope Francis landed on Wednesday morning in Lisbon, the capital of Portugal, to participate in the 37th World Youth Day. After his arrival, the leader of the Catholic Church was received by the Portuguese president, Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa, at the National Palace of Belém, where he held a meeting with the head of state of the Lusitanian nation. The papal visit to Portugal includes meetings with various political and religious representatives and a private meeting with some of the victims of sexual abuse committed by members of the Catholic Church. In this context, Pope Francis also called on Europe to build bridges for peace in the armed conflict in Ukraine in the framework of the World Youth Day.
With deep love for Europe and in the spirit of dialogue that distinguishes this continent, we might ask her, where are you heading if you are not showing the world paths of peace? Creative ways to bring an end to the war in Ukraine and to the many other conflicts causing so much bloodshed. If faced with common problems, our world is divided or, to say the very least, insufficiently cohesive, incapable of confronting together that threaten us all. Planetary injustice, wars, climate and migration crisis. These seem to run faster than our ability and often our will to confront these challenges in a united way.
And in the framework of Pope Francis' visit to Portugal and the 37th World Youth Day, President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa promulgated the amnesty and pardon law that first the government and then the national parliament had debated and approved in the honor of the Pontiff's visit. The law provides for sentence reductions for young prisoners between 16 and 30 years of age, and Rebelo de Sousa announced that it will enter into force on September the 1st. The measure provides for a one-year pardon for sentences of up to 8 years imprisonment and an amnesty for administrative offenses involving fines of up to 1,000 euros for 1 year's imprisonment. Excluded from these benefits are the prisoners who have been found guilty or particularly serious or heinous crimes such as murder or domestic violence. And meanwhile, Portugal's police officers demonstrated ahead of Pope Francis' visit to Lisbon as they demand better working conditions. Portuguese security authorities have expressed concern about the challenges they face in their sector and the precariousness of their working conditions, and they ask the Pope for prayers and support, arguing that that's all they have. Thousands of Catholic worshippers, along with plainclothes police, have been patiently awaiting the Pontiff's arrival at the Belém Palace. The police union has highlighted the lack of response from the Portuguese government to their demands for better salaries. And we have a second short break coming up, but before, we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, and there you will be able to re-watch our interviews, the top stories, the special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Let's go for a final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back. Israeli occupying forces killed another Palestinian teenager. The extrajudicial killing of the 15-year-old Mohammed Farid al-Zahir raises the number of underage Palestinians killed to 39. The facts were reported this Tuesday in the Cisjordanian city of Al Jalil in Hebron. The Israeli troops confirmed the death of the young man, assuring that they tried to attack one of their agents with a knife. The Palestinian Ministry of Health certified the death and announced that once again, the troops delayed medical assistance by blocking the passage of ambulances. In addition, authorities reported another 94 wounded from the last incursion of the occupying forces. And Niger's military junta announced Tuesday night the reopening of its borders with 5 neighboring nations. The coup leader, General Abdurrahman Tishani, declared on national television that he had taken the decision by decree to reopen the border crossings with Algeria, Burkina Faso, Chad, Libya, and Mali from Tuesday. Chani appeared last Wednesday night for the first time since the coup d'etat to announce the removal from power of the Nigerian president, Mohamed Bazoum, or Nigerian president, and the closure of the country's borders hours after the presidential guard detained the president. This action was motivated by the deepening economic and security crisis in the country, which is facing an increase in the operations of the branches of the terrorist groups Islamic State and Al-Qaeda.
Announcement number 15, the land and air borders with Algeria, Burkina Faso, Libya, Mali, and Chad are reopened as from today, August 1st, 2023, signed in Niamey on August 1st, 2023, signed the President of the National Council for the Safeguarding of the Homeland.
On Wednesday, the top military officials of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, arrived in the Nigerian capital, Abuja, to discuss the situation in Niger. The meeting, which will last until Friday, is part of the decisions taken by the bloc after the National Council for the Safeguarding of the Homeland took power in Niger. A delegation from Niger, led by former President Abdul Salami Abubakar, is expected to attend the gathering. The main objective is to seek peaceful solutions and avoid armed intervention, as several member nations of the community have made it clear that they will not allow the use of force. The participation of the Niger delegation, led by the former President Abdul Salami Abubakar, reflects their commitment to international efforts to find peaceful solutions to the situation in the country. In Nigeria on Wednesday, unions rallied across the country to protest the rising cost of living under President Bola Tinubu and called on the government to intervene in a timely manner to improve social welfare. Mobilizations organized by the Nigerian Labour Congress said the economic incentives announced this week by the West African nation's president to alleviate the current crisis were not enough. They also accused him for failing to act quickly to cushion the effect of some of his policies, such as the suspension of costly subsidies that have for decades more than doubled the price of gas, causing a spike in the prices of food and most other basic commodities.
Removal of fuel subsidy has increased almost everything in the country so far. But precisely, if we talk of transportation, for one to transport himself from his house to his office, or those that are in the market, everyone is complaining.
On Wednesday, United Nations updated data on the Sudanese conflict. According to its reports, more than 279,000 people have become displaced. Over the course of the last few months, there has been an increase in the number of people displaced by the war, reaching a figure of more than 3 million people affected. Since April, international agencies have issued alarm bells and warnings about the situation in the region. The World Food Programme, for example, has warned that 40% of the Sudanese population is at risk of falling into a famine cycle. This alarming situation calls for immediate action. In addition, the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees has reported brutal cases of torture, sexual abuse, and executions. On Wednesday, Tunisia's President Kais Saied sacked the Prime Minister Najla Bouden. Saied dismissed the functions of the Prime Minister Najla Bouden, who had been the first woman to head a government in Tunisia, according to a press release by the Tunisian presidency shortly before midnight. President Saied swiftly swore in Mr. Hashani, a figure relatively unknown to the general public. Several meetings have been held in recent days within the government and between the president and ministers to address the problems related to the shortage of subsidized bread in several regions. Saied, who recently stated that bread is a red line for Tunisians, fears a repeat of the bread riots, which in 1984 caused 150 deaths during the Habib's Bourguiba's government. Now we address other topics. Japanese media reported on Wednesday that the passage of the powerful typhoon Kenyan left 1 dead and some 200,000 homes without power on the island of Okinawa in the southern part of the nation. Typhoon Kenyan brought heavy rains to the island of Okinawa with winds of up to 234 kilometers per hour. The weather event is moving westward, where it is forecast to reach China on Friday. Public broadcasters, the NHK, reported that a 90-year-old man died and also confirmed 35 people injured. In this sense, the Okinawa local power company also said that some 200,000 households, or nearly a third of the total in Okinawa department, were still without power on Wednesday. On Wednesday, the Meteorological Service of Beijing confirmed the heaviest rains in 140 years. One of the monitoring stations recorded 744.8 millimeters, the highest rainfall since 1891, when a record 609 millimeters were recorded. These are the consequences of Doksuri, the storm that has already been described as a super typhoon that hit China from south to north. The capital's authorities explained that its surroundings are usually dry, so they were saturated by such a large amount of water. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.